Hello, third graders. Ms. Fogelman here for your math lesson. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Ooh, let's try that again. Oh, there we go. All right, so today is October the 20th, and our topic is again rounding. Our learning target for today is the students will round the 3-digit numbers to the nearest 100. So yesterday we were working on tens. Today we are working on hundreds. Now let me make sure before I continue that I shared, oh, nope, I didn't. I need to share my speakers too. All right, so I wanted to show the following video all about rounding to 100. Oh, or not. There we go.
Math Coach presents Rounding to the Nearest Hundred. We use rounding when we want to estimate. Rounding gives us numbers that are easy to use, like 100, 200, 300, and so on. Rounding numbers help you solve everyday problems where you don't need an exact answer. That's called an estimate. Rounding might look hard, but hey, guess what? If you know how to put numbers in order and can skip count by hundreds, you can learn to round any number to the nearest 100 with ease. Here are some useful things to know. You can show any number on a number line. Numbers to the right have a greater value than numbers to the left. The nearest 100 on either side of our number is a useful benchmark. And the midpoint is the number that is halfway between two benchmarks. If the number you want to round is less than the midpoint, round down. If the number you are rounding is at the midpoint or greater than the midpoint, round up. You can round any number to the nearest 100 in 4 easy steps. Let's see how. Let's round 527 to the nearest 100. Step 1. Figure out what benchmarks to use. To the nearest 100 tells you to choose the 100 before 527 and the 100 after 527. 500 is the lower benchmark, and 600 is the higher benchmark. Now you can set up a number line and mark your benchmarks. Step 2. Find the midpoint between 500 and 600. That's the number that is exactly in the middle. The midpoint is 550. Step 3. Now locate 527 on the number line. 527 is less than 550. So now you're ready for step 4. You can round. 527 is closer to 500 than to 600. So, to the nearest 100, 527 rounds down to 500.
Okay, so that gives you a little bit of an idea of what we'll be doing today. So much like rounding to the nearest 10, rounding to the nearest 100 takes the same steps, just on a larger scale. So let's go ahead, and before we start rounding, let me grab my pen. All right, so here we have 127, and we are going to round 127 to the closest 100. So here again, just like when we were rounding to our closest 10, we are going to make our number line. All right, so we need to find our benchmark that happens before and after our number. Now, since we're in hundreds, we have to find the multiple of 100 that is of 100 before 127 and after 127. So the multiple before 127 would be 100. Okay. And the one after 127 would be 200. Okay, so we're either rounding it to 100 or 200. Now, when we were doing tens, and if we were doing tens between 50 and 60, the midpoint was 55. Well, when we're doing hundreds, it's much the same. Between 100 and 200 would be 150. Okay, so between 0 and 100 would be 50. Between 100 and 200 would be 150. Between 200 and 300 is 250, and so on. So it is much like when we were looking for that midpoint with tens. Now we are doing hundreds. So the midpoint between 100 and 200 is 150. Now we need to decide 127. Does that occur in this area or this? Well, 127 is less than 150. So it actually happens in this section here, which means, is it closer to 100 or closer to 200? It is actually closer to 100, so it rounds to 100. Now remember, when you're rounding, you keep the place that you're rounding to, which in this example would be 100. You keep that number there, so the 1 stays, but everything after that rounded, what you're rounding to, turns into a 0. Let's go ahead and try 768. Okay. With 768, the lower 100 would be 700. Okay, and you know that because that's what is here, 7. And the higher one would be the next multiple of 100, which would be 800. Now your benchmark or midpoint for the middle would be 750. Okay. And then you need to decide, does 768 happen here or here? Meaning, is 768 less than or greater than 750? Well, 768 is greater than 750 because look, that tens place has a 6 in here, but it only has a 5 here. So 768 occurs somewhere in here, probably about here. So is 768 closer to 800 or 700? It is actually closer to 800 because remember, everything 750 and above would round to 800. So 768 rounds to 800. All right. Remember, when we were working with tens, it was anything that had a 5 in the ones place rounded up. Well, here it's anything with 100s, anything that has a 5 in the tens place would round up because it's directly between the two benchmarks. Okay. Our next number is 455. Our lower 100 would be 400. Our next 100, if we're counting by 100s, would be 500. Okay. our midpoint would be 450. Okay, so we need to decide 455. Now here's the tricky part, okay? They both have a 4 in the hundreds place, obviously. This one has a 5 in the tens place, and so does this. But look, this has a 5 in the ones place, and this has a 0. So 455 would be right about here, okay? So it's not much bigger than 450, but it is larger than 450. And remember, anything that's equal to or above rounds to the higher number. Anything equal to that midpoint and above rounds to the higher number. So 455, whoa, would round to 500. All right. You do have a Google form in the virtual classroom. You'll need to do that. And then that's all I have for you today. All right, thank you class, and make sure you get that Google form done. Have a great day.